Artificial intelligence is taking over the world, not just the share market, but also our power supplies, our water, and maybe our workforces. Now, one of the companies that's at the centre of this revolution is Australia's NextDC, listed on the ASX, currently valued at $10 billion almost. Last week, the company announced a huge increase in its forward order book and a capital raising of $1.5 billion in order to build more data centres all around Australia. Craig Scroggie has been the chief executive of NextDC for its entire 15 years existence, and he joins me now for this week's interview. G'day, Craig Scroggie. Thanks for joining us on That's Business.
It's great to be here, Alan.
Now, we can see that there's something pretty remarkable going on with AI this year, just if only in the share prices of the AI businesses and semiconductor companies. Can you just give us a sense of what you're seeing, starting with your own company, and what's happening to demand for what they call compute in your centres?
The NextDC, Alan, is a builder of large-scale data centres all over the country. We build metropolitan data centres in the cities that support hospitals and emergency services, defence, and other critical infrastructure, most like people would use every day for their online transactions. But we also build these big hyperscale and artificial intelligence facilities that are supporting the next era, or the fourth industrial revolution, so the beginning of the build-out of the new infrastructure that will support AI. We build data centers all the way at the edge where submarine cables land in Australia, and they also support ground telemetry stations for satellite support and many other applications in remote and regional areas. And that's as remote as the Pilbara in Western Australia, all the way up to Darwin at the top of the country, and around each of the major cable landing station areas, the Sunshine Coast, Geelong, and other locations. So our business, Alan, is building the digital infrastructure that supports legacy computing, enterprise, banks, telcos. We build for the biggest hyperscale operators in the world for cloud computing, and we build for artificial intelligence for GPUs and the production of knowledge.
How many people do you employ?
Today, the company's about 500 full-time employees and probably about 4,000 or 5,000 in contract roles. So you've got development, construction, all of the other supply chain components to that. So yeah, it's a large site, Alan. A large construction site has more than 1 to 1,100 people on site every day, and we've got those going all over the country today. So yeah, it's literally thousands.
So you're reminding us that you obviously have been around longer than AI, or at least the big AI boom that started with the release of ChatGPT in 2022. Has there been, what we can see, a sort of an inflection point in your business as a result of the coming of AI?
Yeah, just recently, Alan, if you look at the scale of what we've announced in the last week, we had the single largest contract announcement in the company's history. It was 250 megawatts of new computing capacity and power to support one of the world's largest hyperscalers that will deploy AI infrastructure in Australia. To put the size of that contract into context, over the history of the company, not only it is the single largest deal, but that transaction by itself is more than we're actually billing today from the last more than a decade of sales. So the company will more than quadruple in size over the course of the next few years once we have constructed and delivered all of the data center and AI infrastructure that we have sold. So EBITDA goes to more than $1 billion based on what we have just sold to this point in time. So quite a unique moment in history.
It is. And what about globally? You're obviously keeping an eye on what's happening around the world. What is the build rate of data centers and the growth in demand around the world?
Well, it's extraordinary in every region. We will open our first international facility in Malaysia in downtown Kuala Lumpur in 2 weeks' time, Alan. So we'll be bringing a new hyperscale artificial intelligence facility to the enterprise and cloud AI markets in Malaysia for those key enterprises there in the Asia region. We're also building in Japan, in Tokyo as well. So from a regional point of view, there is no shortage of demand. It's a historical high for the securing of data center capacity and the building of new capacity, because the sheer size and scale of what needs to be built is literally thousands of megawatts. And that's bigger than all of the historical compute infrastructure that has been installed to date.
And how does the growth rate in Australia compare with the rest of the world? Are we sort of keeping up or falling behind, or what?
Australia is a very, very significant player globally in cloud computing and AI, certainly significantly in advance of our population size. Australia serves not only Australian enterprises, but it serves the region as well for compute. We are a trusted location for global compute to be deployed because of our security status. So a stable political environment, a clear regulatory environment, and also a trusted Five Eyes security partner. So Australia has actually really punched above its weight, Alan, in our role in cloud computing, and will now, because of the abundance of land and the ability to grow and scale renewable energy, solar, wind, battery, we will have an outsized opportunity for Australia to be a global leader in the development of digital infrastructure for artificial intelligence.
Well, I'll get onto that in a moment. I just wouldn't mind a brief primer for our listeners as to what's actually going on with compute. And because I mean, what we're talking about, I think, is the creation of tokens, which are the currency or the basic unit of artificial intelligence. Are you able to simply tell us what's actually taking place when these tokens are created, and the extent of power and so on that's required?
Yeah, let's go back in history just to touch, Alan, to give context to digital infrastructure. So traditionally, computers were hosted in office buildings. So if you're a bank or a telco, you ran your own systems. Over the course of the last decade, we've moved those computers out of on-premise office buildings into specialized data centers that allowed us to improve energy efficiency and to improve sustainability outcomes. And that's been really the role of data centers over the last decade. Most recently, the emergence of artificial intelligence has meant that we moved from CPUs predominantly to GPUs. So those GPUs from companies like NVIDIA.
What does that stand for? What does CPU and GPU stand for?
Yeah, the central processing unit or the graphics processing unit, essentially the difference between linear transactions. So in a CPU, like in your laptop, it was linear transactions, lots of them very quickly. In the NVIDIA world for GPUs, you're able to do parallel processing. And that came predominantly from their history in the gaming industry, where rendering graphics was a very, very memory and system intensive use. And so the design of these GPUs was to allow parallel processing of information in real time. And as it turns out, the parallel processing of information was highly relevant and useful for artificial intelligence systems, for large language models. So when we go from the traditional data center, that its role was largely to store and protect information and to share it. It has security classifications. It's a physical perimeter, not just a digital perimeter as well. But when we move into the AI world, we're moving into the production of tokens. And essentially that is the GPU producing a word. That token is essentially the economic unit of output. And for AI to scale, we need more GPU computing capacity so that more tokens can be produced for people who are using large language models like ChatGPT or Claude from Anthropic.
So do you have a simple way to talk about the growth rate of token production?
Well, right now, the scale of demand for artificial intelligence is greater than the world's ability to be able to meet that with power, the energy required, and the data center physical build out. So there is more demand to host GPU infrastructure than there is physical energy and buildings constructed today.
Because it's interesting because everyone's been going on about how many data centers are being built, and it's the most incredible infrastructure build, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. And you're saying that the demand for what these things are doing is greater than even that amount of capital expenditure.
It would be at least an order of magnitude greater, Alan, than what we've seen at any other point in time in history. So a big data center used to be 20, 30, 40 megawatts only 5 years ago. A big data center today will be 100, 200, 300, and going to very soon be in excess of 1,000 megawatts of power. So you're talking about the size of a small city.
Right. So,
If you
so
were
how much land? How much land does that do these things? Will these things take up? I mean, what are we talking about? Taking up half of Victoria or half of New South Wales or something?
Well, depending on the type of data center you build, if you're building to support the enterprise, so banks and online, you build them close to the city, they're low latency. If you're in a hospital and your data is being accessed medical systems, you want the computers close to the user. Whereas in artificial intelligence, we can go to more remote regions or further out from cities where power is available and allow us to really do a couple of things. One is to build flat, so single story buildings, whereas when we build in metropolitan areas, you build multi-story buildings to get more efficient use out of the land. So as artificial intelligence becomes a much larger feature of the digital infrastructure landscape, they will be built very large and low lying, and they're actually built in quite a different way. They're not built necessarily with the same security or resiliency requirements, because artificial intelligence has a slightly different use case in the production of tokens. So yes, they do take up a significant amounts of land. They can be built in areas further out from cities or in regional areas. And predominantly, you'll see them focused around areas where we can secure large scale energy or connectivity to the NEM, so that access to transmission and generating infrastructure is a key feature of being able to produce thousands of megawatts of power to run artificial intelligence.
Now, in March, the federal government released a series of expectations of data centres and AI infrastructure developers, and they say meeting these national expectations will be the foundation of their social licence to operate in Australia. So what did you think of those? Did you have a problem with any of them?
Well, they said largely what was already the case for the industry. Australia is a little bit different to the US. And so if you see a lot of the headlines in the US and the media at the moment, many of the questions are in relation to developers of infrastructure using community resources. In Australia, and as long as we've been building data centers for 15 years, we've always had to pay for our own substation infrastructure, transmission to connect to electricity market, and then the ability to be able to sponsor through PPAs or power purchase agreements, financial instruments, the development of new renewable energy that goes into the grid. So the release of those guidelines was really just the government meeting or re-communicating what was already legislated and already the case in Australia for the developers of data center and other digital infrastructure assets.
So do you think your industry has already got a social licence, do you think?
Well, in the main, the majority of things that the government talked about in those requirements were giving the public confidence that these assets that are being developed aren't taking away from community infrastructure. They're not taking energy assets away from the community. They're not using drinking water as they're built in the future. They're using either recycled water, not accessing potable water resources. So, yeah, I think that all of the key messages that the government shared for goals for the development of digital infrastructure were completely logical. The majority of them are already legislated and in place today. And it goes to give the community confidence that the assets that are being developed in a sustainable way.
So what do you do about water? I mean, that has been a persistent criticism of data centres around the world, and Australia is actually a dry country. I mean, Europe and America have got a lot more rivers in them than we do.
I think you want to remember that the function when people say data centers use water, essentially data centers have historically used water to reject heat, and that then gets evaporated. So they don't consume the water and not put it back into the environment. The first component is that the type of water we use is the important question. So we don't want to use drinking water. We want to use recycled water. So in the future, water is important to use because it is 3,000 times more thermally efficient at rejecting heat than using power to provide the cooling. And so water and the type of water is an important choice to get the best sustainability outcome for digital infrastructure. So we're developing recycled water plants in partnership with regional players. So in Melbourne, as an example, Southeast Melbourne Water will be building a new recycled water plant with us as the key anchor customer to support that. In Sydney, our S4 development, the new Sydney one that we just announced recently, will use recycled water that's being developed through Connexa in New South Wales. So those type of infrastructure investments are being funded by us, and the community will actually benefit from access to those pieces of infrastructure that hadn't been built before.
What is it being recycled from?
Generally, the water is either recycled captured or recycled desalinated. It just depends on the region. And,
Captured what from? You mean from
sewer
sewage?
water? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So Singapore have a great term for it. They quite elegantly describe it as new water. But water can be refined and recycled to different standards.
New water, but it's old water.
It's old water that has been recycled, and it's now new water. So it's essentially sewer mining. We tap into the sewer. We take the wastewater, we recycle and treat the wastewater, and then use that water to cool computers.
Do you think we'll end up moving on to desalination as well, or instead?
I think it's highly likely that as the technology continues to evolve, every time we consider a new development, we'll use the best or most sustainable next available technology. One of the key things that has continued to happen in the industry, and this is the key benefit of artificial intelligence itself, the production of knowledge and the access to information and the quality of digital twins, our ability to completely build an infrastructure asset in a digital model and then apply that to the physical world is allowing us to improve the sustainability outcomes, not just in our industry, but in all industries. So the fact that you can build digital twins for almost every industry today to improve efficiency and sustainability outcomes will drive new developments for us to improve the way we run our businesses.
And what about electricity? I mean, it's noticeable that when you talk about the size of your data centers and what you're doing, you talk about it in terms of megawatts, which is electricity. So obviously electricity is what it's all about. So what are you doing to the demand for electricity?
Yeah, look, it's important to remember no power, no computer, no lights. So energy is the most important first component in the supply chain. The key change over time has been the density in computing. So as we continue to get improvements in CPU and GPU technology, we can produce more information using less energy. So the first thing to recognize is compute gets more dense and it produces more information for the same amount of power that it did previously. And that is going to continue to be true. It used to be referred to as Moore's Law. The price performance doubling of integrated circuits would improve. And Gordon Moore, who was the co-founder of Intel, wrote that seminal white paper in 1965. It's been true for 50 plus years. And now it's referred to as Wang's Law, which is the price performance improvement of GPUs and the output. So power is critically important.
That's before you move on. That's actually, Moore's Law was twice, I think it was doubling every 18 months, I think.
18 to 24 months, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so but the new law is like every shorter time, isn't it?
Well, the density, the scale of the shift is much higher. So rather than it doubling every 18 to 24 months, we're seeing density increase by 5 to 10 times every couple of years. So yeah, the rate of change is speeding up.
That's right.
So to complete the question on energy, Alan, data centers do consume energy in order to power the computers, both for cloud computing and to produce tokens for artificial intelligence. But the efficiency of that is continuing to improve. And it is important to recognize in our day-to-day lives, you may look at your iPhone, or you're on Netflix watching a movie, you are creating content or consuming content on TikTok, you're using work systems, Office 365, you're on Amazon doing online shopping. All of those systems are coming out of a data center. If you're at hospital, your radiology, your pathology, your scans, your MRI, they're all going into digital systems that live in a data center. If you're having robotic surgery from a Da Vinci machine and you're in a hospital, it's coming out of a supercomputer that's hosted in a data center. So all of those infrastructure assets require energy to run them. And the key role for us over time is to continue to help the energy transition, and that is support the efficient use of energy, and obviously the development of more solar, wind, and battery, because data centers don't only operate during the day. We need firm energy, and that firm energy, traditionally in Australia, for our communities would have come from coal and gas, and over time it will need to increasingly come from new renewable sources, and that will be large-scale battery developments.
And will the consequence of your industry expanding at the rate you're talking about be that it pushes up everyone's power bill, do you think?
Well, in the US, that is the question that gets asked. Does my consumer power bill go up as a result of more infrastructure being built? In Australia, actually, when we build these assets, so substations, transmission infrastructure, we actually have to pay for it. So the opposite is generally going to be true, and that is that as our power load gets larger, we will pay a larger share of the shared infrastructure cost for consumers. So we have to pay the establishment cost of the infrastructure, so the consumer doesn't pay that. The consumer gets the benefit of using the community infrastructure that we have to build, whether it's sewer, recycled water, or more electricity infrastructure. And then we obviously pay a larger share as our consumption of power increases over time. So in Australia, over time, it will mean lower power costs, not higher.
Right. Okay. So, but the government's current target is for 82% of the grid to be renewable, I think, by 2050. And so how does the demand for AI and the growth in data centers collide with that target, particularly since it's not going to be met? There's no way that it's going to be met. So will that mean that the use of fossil fuels, coal-fired power generation, is going to have to be extended? And will data centers, do you think, actually mean that the planet will actually warm more than it was going to?
Well, the first principle to start with is that the technology that we are consuming and using is solving problems, whether it's in medicine, healthcare, community. I mean, every industry is benefiting today from the production of knowledge. So when the facts change, and when you think about views and goals that are set in relation to carbon targets and other things that the government would need to consider, when the community and the technology use of artificial intelligence is driving up demand, that means that the way that we support that and the scale of the infrastructure is going to change as well. So the first point I would make is that in the ordinary course of any industrial revolution, and this is one that we're going through now, the facts change. When the facts change and we make decisions in relation to
I'm trying to understand exactly what you're saying there. I mean, are you saying that because it's going to be great with AI, it doesn't matter so much if the planet gets too hot?
I think the point, Alan, that I'm trying to make is that when we have new technology, we're solving problems that we couldn't solve before. So there are trade-offs in any modern economy. We'll solve health problems or challenges that hadn't been solved historically. We'll develop new energy technologies that will use power and water more efficiently as we grow the scale of AI infrastructure. So I think there are trade-offs in any modern economy. The airline industry, ports, roads, rail, transport infrastructure, they all have been through these moments in history. And digital infrastructure is going through that transition right now.
Okay. Anyway, let's just talk about cybersecurity for a minute, because a couple of weeks ago, Anthropic was going to release a new version of Claude called Mythos, but it pulled back because Mythos, it turns out, is some kind of super hacker, and it was too dangerous, they decided, and they've given it to a few companies to kind of test and work on. But it's a bit of a wake-up call about what AI can do to security, both national security and corporate security and personal security. So what's your role in dealing with this stuff? Do you have a role in running the data centers, or is that up to companies like Anthropic to deal with?
Well, it probably starts really at the software layer. So when you build software systems, Alan, what they're describing there is the discovery of things called zero-day vulnerabilities. So that's a flaw in a piece of software that hadn't been previously exposed. And normally a hacker would be looking for those zero-day vulnerabilities in software in order to exploit an opportunity to steal private information, credit card details, whatever the information is they're looking to control, or to get access to a company in order to, a company or an individual, and then try and blackmail you to sell you that information back, or to tell you that they're not going to access it. So I think what you saw in messaging there from Anthropic is that the AI capabilities that they believe they've developed in the new product, Mythos, is able to identify more security flaws in existing web pages and software programs than anything we've seen previously. So they're giving early access to the product to companies to be able to test it on their systems and make sure that any vulnerabilities are plugged. So they're looking for what we call zero-day vulnerabilities. I think the other thing to remember, Alan, is that when they are talking about the release of these new AI products, they also use more compute as well. And at the moment, one of the constraints that we have is that we don't have enough compute, we don't have enough GPUs operating globally to support the growth of all these AI systems. And so they probably need to also slow down a little bit or throttle the usage of some of those systems because there's simply just not enough compute to meet the demand today.
Yeah, but there will be eventually, I presume. I mean, are we entering some kind of hacking arms race, do you think?
The question that is probably the most important one to ask is how much compute is enough? And I think that the history of computing tells us that we always continue to use the technology to build new technology. Ray Kurzweil, who wrote The Singularity is Near and still works at Google today, describes this as technology built by technology accelerates the rate of change. So Kurzweil's law means that we will get new tech developed by existing tech, and that will allow us to build and develop more powerful technology. And I think that'll be true in AI. And at the moment, it's demonstrating that the world today, from an energy or an infrastructure point of view, cannot meet the demands of GPUs. And for the foreseeable future, I don't think that we're going to catch up to that demand.
Yeah, but you didn't answer the question about hacking. What do you think is going to happen there? I mean, that's that's a real worry.
It probably is a worry insofar as saying people have been asking this question about the future of quantum computing and what does it mean when quantum computers can solve security access issues.
Yeah, but that's miles off. We've actually got AI right now, and Mythos is kind of there, ready to go.
Yeah, I think it's a legitimate concern. There's no question that as the technology improves, so too, and it's not only the technology capability, but the social engineering capability. I'm not sure if you've how many emails you receive a day from people telling you they found the next best investment opportunity and you should send them your bank details, Alan. But that type of attack, which are driven by social engineering, not just the technology, are getting better because the quality of the writing skills, the calls that you get from people to your mobile phone, the bot farms, the phone farms, they're all improving in technology. So the downside to technology advancement is that the criminal aspects of the industry improve at the same time as the positive ones.
Yeah, what I'm getting is emails from people saying that they're getting emails from me, inviting them to invest in.
I see videos of you recommending things online all the time that you're probably not endorsing.
Absolutely not. And and these people,
you need to be chasing them and getting your fair share of payment for endorsing their illegal products, Alan.
No, I'm trying to get them taken down, but the trouble is they're just popping up like they're all over the place. It's incredible. No, but this is this is such a problem. I mean, there's actually videos of me that are clearly made by AI that are inviting people to give them money. And some people write to me and say they did, and they've lost all this money.
And that is certainly happening. I mean, the artificial intelligence video platform capability today. So if you look at products and listeners can go online and have a look at this technology. There's a great platform called HeyGen that is a video platform. All we would have to do, Alan, is really just give it this video of you and I, and it could completely remake this podcast into any format or any message that it wanted it to. So the technology exists to do that today. In the most part, if you think about Google's Notebook LM, which is also an exceptional product, you can give it a long, dense research paper and then ask it to take the research paper and turn it into a podcast for you to listen to. And then we could make that podcast out of you and I talking without having to have actually had the conversation. So technology certainly exists. And like at any point in time historically before, fraud, identity theft, people taking advantage of other people, that's not going to change. I think people just need to really do the basics, and that is ensure any product they look online, they know what it is, it's verified, they're going to the actual website rather than clicking on links in emails. There's a lot of basic security things that we need to do in order to protect ourselves as consumers.
Oh yeah, but this stuff's terrible. I mean, can you understand how people would think, why the hell do we need all these NextDC data centers? Because they're going to use up all our electricity and water. They're going to the AI that they're supporting are going to hack us and take money off us, and they're going to put a whole lot of people out of work. And what's more, some of the AI leaders, like Dario Amodei at Anthropic, say that there's a 20 to 25% chance of civilization doom. I mean, I don't think it all sounds very attractive at all.
Well, if you, Alan, needed to go to hospital and have a life-saving surgery with world-class medical infrastructure and get operated on a computer that was AI assisted, I think you'd say that access to that technology was important and a significant advancement for humanity in terms of healthcare, and it would improve your chance of surviving. The downside is the same with technology, and that is that someone will be using it for nefarious reasons and not for good. So with all the good advancements comes the challenges in a societal sense, and I think we just have to continue to
but what about this thing
recognize that your point is, should we not have these advances in AI, and should we not have the infrastructure assets? I think I would take the advances in healthcare and all the other benefits that come along with society, and then have to manage the downside of those advancements, just like we do in any other technology.
No, well, I suppose the thing is that we're not getting a choice, really. I mean, this as ordinary people, like, this is happening. It's whether we like it or not, it's happening, right?
I'll give you a choice, Alan. We're using an online platform today to make a podcast, and we could go back to the recording studio and do this together. You wouldn't be able to put this on iView and have it up in a day. You wouldn't be able to share all of the content with the editorial team. You wouldn't be able to have large-scale distribution through the ABC to make your podcasts access a larger audience and share the knowledge and guests that you're bringing onto the program. So I think in your own sense, I would say to you, if you stopped using this technology, you personally would stop contributing to the development of more digital infrastructure. Are you prepared to do that?
Well, okay, let me ask you, if somebody gave you a pill and said, this has got a 25% chance of killing you, would you swallow it?
Well, what's the upside?
No, whatever the upside is, if whatever it might be, it's going to make you incredibly intelligent, but it's a 25% chance you die. Would you do it?
Yeah, I don't know that the framing makes sense, but
okay, righto.
I'll go back to my point. And my point is that you made the statement that maybe we don't need these buildings and we shouldn't use this infrastructure. You are personally using it. The ABC are using it. You do podcasts with the AFR, and all of that knowledge and content gets distributed. You can do more work today and create more content and distribute it more widely to your listeners and to educate people than we could at any other point in time in history. And this technology will continue to improve. You won't even need a producer to review the content. AI will have already packaged it up and be ready for you to ship. So the improvements in the tech, just for you personally and for platforms like the ABC, means more product, better quality, and more distribution and access to consumers. At the same time, the downside issues exist, and we're just going to have to manage them like we have at any other point in time.
Okay. What about the thing about displacing workers? Do you think that the massive investment that obviously you're undertaking and others are taking will be paid for purely by productivity gains of the existing workforce, or will it have to be also partly paid for by the reduction of the workforce?
Yeah, look, this is probably one of the biggest topics right now that people are asking. There's a lot of fear. fear and anxiety, certainly about AI, job loss. What does it mean for me? And I think the first thing is there won't be an immediate displacement of roles. AI isn't going to replace you tomorrow. What AI will do, certainly, and we're doing this in our company, and I know many other CEOs I talk to are adopting large language models in order to improve the quality of their customer engagements, to reduce tasks that would have been done, or speed up the time it takes to produce information, to be able to just do more from a productivity standpoint. So I think it is true, Alan, that AI will improve productivity. We're starting to see it. If you look at Microsoft, Amazon, Meta, all their results have showed that enterprise is paying for these technologies. We're starting to see that shift in the demonstration of the monetization of the investments in AI. So that's coming through. There is no question that jobs will change. And certainly in my own organization, we are driving to improve productivity, to improve worker outcomes, to use the tools to do our work more efficiently. What that means in the future, it may mean changes to the way we work, the type of roles, but I think that will play out over a long period of time. We didn't go from the horse and cart to full autonomous vehicles in one flick of the switch. Certainly, the technology revolution will probably speed up, but we've had these type of transitions in work historically over time. They have existed in all of history, and I don't think that they will necessarily be particularly different this time around.
So are you saying that you don't think governments will have to come up with some restructure of the welfare system to help, to come up with what some people call the universal basic income in order to pay people who are basically permanently out of work? You don't think that's going to be required?
Well, the question would be, is that any different to the government paying people who are permanently out of work today? Does the unemployment increase?
The job seeker allowance is not enough. It's meant to just get you between jobs, and you have to keep applying for jobs in order to get it. So it's a different thing.
Yeah, I mean, the question of universal basic income certainly discussed globally at the moment around what the future of artificial intelligence may mean for reshaping jobs. But that's knowledge work. I mean, physical work. The biggest shortage we got right now for all the chippies and plumbers and electricians and everybody else out there, there's thousands of them in demand. So I don't think, if we're building infrastructure, the requirement for new jobs, and certainly existing ones that go to develop the technologies, it's greater than it's been at any other point in time before. The salaries for chippies and electricians and plumbers is probably higher than we've seen at any other point in time in recent history.
That's true. Okay. The other concern that people have is that it's a bubble, the stock market bubble, and it's going to burst at some point soon. What do you think of that?
Well, what I know for sure after being a public company CEO for 15 years is share prices go up and down. The question about what happens with AI impacting share prices or values, certainly seen a lot of immediate reactions to AI affecting the software industry itself, and SaaS companies have been impacted because the way the technology works is AI can talk to another AI without the human. And it does that through a thing called an MCP. It's a model context protocol. You use connectors for systems to talk to other systems. So if the human no longer needs the SaaS interface and the computers can talk to each other, that's a whole new layer of automation that we hadn't previously had access to. Yeah, I think all these questions, Alan, are good questions. I'm not sure that there's any clear answers for these things, but we'll certainly, deal with them over time.
Well, just finally, then, do you think about what life is going to be like in 10 years, say? I mean, what are we going to be doing? Will we have robots helping us and
physical or embodied AI? So to that point, we're just starting to see, if you look at companies who are developing robots for enterprise and factory work, and you look at companies that are producing them for the home. So Figure is a company that's producing a fully autonomous AI and embodied AI, physical AI.
That is a robot, an AI robot, you mean?
Yep. Tesla, Elon Musk is doing this. These type of robots are being developed today. The technology and the capability, Unitree in China is doing this as well. The technology is extraordinary. So I think that there is no question that we'll see more automation. It'll be very specific to the job and task in the short term. And does it become fully embodied? Autonomous vehicles, look at the car capability today. What does that mean for, will your Uber drive itself rather than having an Uber driver? What does that mean for safety? What does it mean for the insurance industry if cars don't crash into each other anymore?
What does it mean for the drivers? They're all out of work.
Yeah, there's no question that they'll change and they'll have to find new opportunities. I was in a Zoox in Las Vegas recently, which is similar to the Waymo driverless vehicle. And if you're in San Francisco or any of the cities in the US and you go in a Waymo, it's quite amazing because you get in, there's no driver, there's a steering wheel and the pedals, and it's operating itself and it's driving you over the city. I was in a Zoox in Las Vegas recently. It's literally a lounge room on wheels. It has no steering wheel, no pedals. And I was talking to the guy that was running the pickup area, and I said, are there no humans? And he said, well, I'm still here. I'm the concierge that opens the door, checks you didn't leave your hat or your jacket in the car. And also he pointed out to me some of the other Zooks have people in them with computers because they're actually out doing the video recording of the street and traffic and human interaction. So those jobs didn't exist. So the driverless vehicle, it exists now. There's no driver, but there's a whole lot of new jobs that didn't exist, mapping the routes and human interaction and other things. So I think this is just the history of technology.
These things are safer too, aren't they? There's far less accidents, which means that they'll be cost less to insure and there'll be more of them.
Well, your computer doesn't go out on a Friday night, have too many beers, and then drive their car home, do they? So, what does that mean for the human error component? Whether it's doing things that improve safety outcomes, or just the fact that cars will talk to each other, people will not exceed the speed limit, traffic lights will talk to vehicles. So, if the system is safer and there are fewer accidents, that will change the insurance industry. That won't only change jobs in taxi and Uber type applications. It'll change jobs right through the whole supply chain. So, there's many unanswered questions, and the next 5 to 10 years will be the most extraordinary in humanity. So, I think we all want to be around to see what happens.
Yes, indeed. In fact, a human error crashed into my car yesterday. In fact.
Well, if that vehicle was driving itself, it might not happen.
That's right. What's the end goal for NextDC? I mean, do data centers like yours all over Australia or what?
Well, we have them all over Australia, every major city, regional areas. So today, 17 operational sites. There's $3 billion being invested this year. And so after 15 years of developing data centers in Australia and now developing them internationally, $3 billion this year in investment. We've come out after this record and contract announcement, and we've forecast that we'll invest $5 billion next year. So there's $8 billion over the next 2 years building digital infrastructure. I think the future for the company is as exciting as it's ever been. This moment in history, building new digital infrastructure to support not just cloud but artificial intelligence is going to be pretty amazing for Australia. We have an opportunity as a country to win our unfair share of digital infrastructure that can be exported around the world. And so we want to take advantage of that if we can.
Thanks for that, Craig. That was terrific.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Alan.
Thanks so much for joining me on That's Business. You can find That's Business on the ABC Business Daily feed every Friday, so you don't miss out. Just make sure you follow ABC Business Daily to find us on ABC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts. Carrington Clark and the ABC Business Daily team will be back in the feed on Monday.